Hi guys, my name's Justin, and today I'm going to show you how to safely use a Ouija board. Now, using the Ouija board or any other sort of spirit board can be a very positive and uplifting experience, or it can turn into something quite frightening very quickly if you don't take the necessary precautions. Now, there's a lot of shit out there on the internet that if you summon a demon through the Ouija board, you need to break it into 7 different pieces, but no. I'm going to give you practical advice based on my own personal experience, regardless of whether or not you believe that you can actually connect to the other side through a Ouija board. Step 1. Evaluate your intentions. Are you using the spirit board because you just want a little bit of fun, or are you using it because you actually want some practical advice for your life? As much as it's sold as a children's toy and as much fun as it can be, spirit boards aren't a toy. And I'm going to tell you in the latter half of the video why I think so through a story. Now, you can use a spirit board by yourself, but personally I think that it's always best to have a good group of centered people who you trust to use it with you to help ease your mind. Step 2, make sure that you 100% trust the people that you're going to be using it with. Because if you don't, you're going to be arguing about who's actually pushing the planchette. Step 3, make sure that nobody using the board has any undealt with and significant past emotional traumas. You and your group of friends shouldn't be dealing with any significant episodes of severe mental health issues. This includes eating disorders. You shouldn't use the board after a breakup or immediately after the death of a loved one. I know that this might sound harsh, but at the very end of the video I'll explain with a story why this is the case, along with why I've probably been put off from using it for a while. One thing that you don't often hear is that if you have had a history of mental health issues, using the board can trigger a relapse. That's because you really don't know how you're going to react, especially if it's the first time that you've used the board. Let me tell you, it can trigger severe anxiety if you're not prepared for it when shit starts to get real. And I mean this in all seriousness. It's a warning for you guys, please listen. Make sure that everybody using the board is in a stable and healthy headspace. Step 4, you want to cleanse the board. And you can do that either by smoke cleansing, and I have a video right here on how to do that, or you can use holy water or salt. Make sure you just don't drench the board in water. And just know that by doing so, you've cleared the board of any past lingering energies. Step 5, set up protections. Have you and the group of people that you're using the board with hold hands and imagine a bright white light beginning from the planchette, expanding around to the board, gradually enveloping you all and around the room that you're in. This visualization is very important as it helps to raise the vibration of the room. Also, audibly ask to be connected only to spirits that have your highest good in mind. I personally like to say a few prayers, and you can as well say whatever prayer is compatible with your spiritual path. I'll leave some of the prayers that I use in the description box below, and please feel free to check them out. I usually ask to be connected to my holy guardian angels. Sometimes I will cast a circle as well, but that's usually for practitioners of magic. I also like to put salt on the board and add crystals for extra effect. Step 6. Be respectful to the spirits. I can't emphasize this enough. Don't taunt or humiliate the spirits because that usually doesn't end very well. Also, come prepared with a list of questions that you've prepared beforehand, because that shows that you genuinely want answers to the questions that you're asking. And remember, silly questions get silly answers. Step 7. Lastly, if any of you start to feel uncomfortable, end this session by moving it to goodbye and audibly saying goodbye. Also, don't remove your fingers from the planchette during this session, and if your arm starts to get tired, you can switch over by doing this. Also, if it starts to move around in a counterclockwise motion without landing on anything, end the session. If it starts to push the crystals off the board and acts confused, end the session. If whatever entity you've contacted starts to say very harsh or negative things, immediately end the session. Now, yet again, like I've said, while using a spirit board can be a very positive and uplifting experience, and personally, I've gotten very positive and enlightening messages that I've put to good use, and I've actually seen some quite surprising results in my life through them. But I'm going to tell you guys a story about why I highly recommend doing this, and if not, you could end up in the situation that I currently am sort of still in. So, about a week ago, myself and another friend decided to use this particular board. And, you know, we were quite curious. We wanted to find out some things about our life. So we started the session. Now, what I didn't know beforehand was that this particular friend has had a very serious history of some self-hatred and mental health issues. Nor did I realize that she probably wasn't in the best headspace to be using it. And while initially the messages that were coming through were very positive, it started to take a very strange turn. I began to feel extremely uncomfortable, and I noticed that she was becoming really emotional. I asked her, "Do you want to end the session?" and she responded with, "No, I want to keep going." So we just kept going despite my reservations. And what I noticed is that the planchette started to move counterclockwise without really landing on anything, and it did that constantly. And I was like, this is really strange. And occasionally it would go to a letter, or a symbol, or a sign, but it just kept moving counterclockwise. And then I noticed that it started to push the crystals off the board. And that's when I started to get really concerned. Because all the previous times that I've used the board, none of this has happened. And the messages that came through were usually very clear. But the messages coming through were very repetitive. And it started to touch on things that were very sensitive for my friend. She started to get visibly disturbed. And it came to a point where I was like, okay, it looks like we've asked all the questions that we want, let's move it to goodbye. And here's the weird thing. My friend, who's usually very normal and would never joke around like this, I kid you not, she did this. She rolled her head back and just looked up at the ceiling. I started freaking out. I was like, holy shit, what the fuck? I'm like, Jesus, I'm not prepared for this today. I'm not prepared for an exorcism or a possession. Not today, Satan. Little did I know that I had gotten myself into a situation that was probably a lot more than I had bargained for. Obviously, I was like, are you okay? Like, I started asking her if she was okay, and she was like, yeah, I just feel like really out of it right now. I'm not like all the way there. And I'm like, are you going to be okay to get home? Because she rode her bicycle here. And I'm like, are you going to be okay to cycle back? And she told me, yeah, it should be okay. And I noticed that she'd just give me this weird, empty, blank stare, like, and then sometimes she'd do this. I was like, oh my god, I can't deal with this right now, not today. And I started to think about what went wrong, because all the previous times had gone so well, the messages coming through were extremely positive, and I felt very at peace, but this time I felt extremely uncomfortable. So what I did was, after she got home, I started to text her and say, how are things going? But I noticed that on my end, my room started to feel very eerie. And most of the time my room feels very positive, I feel very comfortable, and I don't really have any issues with it. But I couldn't help but feel afraid in my own room. And I noticed that just right here next to the closet, there was this very eerie presence every time I'd walk over there. You know that feeling you get when you watch a horror movie and you just feel this like tingling on your head and it just makes you feel really weird? That's the feeling that I went to sleep with. And I mean, the entire time I was like, Justin, knock it off. It probably wasn't that big of a deal. Just trying to rationalize my way out of it. The next morning I woke up feeling a little bit better, and I went out to uni and went out to my classes. And when I came back, I know it was in broad daylight as well. The sun was coming through the window, and I'm like, I feel really, really horrible in my room. I'm like, this is really weird. And funnily enough, almost coincidentally, a few days beforehand, I had met a friend who claimed to be clairvoyant, and that's another video. Hopefully I'll be able to get her on my YouTube channel. But yeah, and she told me that what I had done was accidentally summon. Now this is her version of the story. She told me that I had accidentally summoned a negative entity that had been lingering on my friend because of her past emotional issues. And so I was like, okay. My clairvoyant friend said, I'm going to send some of my angels with you. And I was like, okay. I'm like, whatever. So I came back, I said some prayers to St. Michael the Archangel, I read out some psalms, and I also did some cleansing. And afterwards, my room felt much better. I didn't feel the presence anymore, especially after praying to St. Michael. Now here's where it gets a little bit weird. On my friend's side, I asked her how she felt, and actually the next day she said she felt very, very at peace, very happy, very joyful, and there is nothing really wrong. And a few days later, I told her that I had actually done this like banishing ritual to get rid of this negative entity, or at least this presence, this very uneasy presence that I felt in my room. And coincidingly, the day that I had done that, she noticed that the presence came back. And I was like, oh shit, okay, this isn't just going on in our heads. There is something really legit to this. And the most annoying thing is that I like to think myself a very rational person. And I'm the type of person who, wants evidence. And here I was left with a bizarre set of occurrences, no way to scientifically analyze the situation from a third-person perspective, and I was left with a series of many different explanations. And it turns out that my friend had told me her past and her history, and I realized that we had gotten ourselves into a lot more than we had bargained for. She said that she noticed since adolescence that a presence had been following her, and yeah, basically we accidentally channeled it, and it turns out that this thing was trying to intercept messages that we were getting from her guardian angel. So just 2 days ago actually, I went over to her room and I did the same banishing ritual, except this time I was much more thorough, and I actually said a few exorcism prayers while there. And it took me a lot of mental preparation because honestly, you know, growing up as a very conservative Christian, you hear about all these demons and why you shouldn't play with a Ouija board and this and that. And I never really come face to face with the spirit world until that moment. I'm a very spiritual person, I'm a tarot reader, I'm also very interested in ceremonial magic and hermeticism, and also in Christian esoterica, but I wasn't actually really prepared for this, and this experience has really sort of put me off from using the board for a good while. I probably won't be using this board anytime in the future. I've realized that while it is very enlightening and you can get, you know, quite uplifting messages from it, it should never really be your first recourse to answers for. I don't know if I'm making sense, but basically, if you want answers to life, seek out other means first. Choose Ouija boards last. Hope you guys found this video somewhat informative and entertaining. Please like this video and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. And I'll see you guys soon.